All right, this is
All right.
the RSC podcast, and I think we're going to start out with a discussion on healthcare and um, college and academia leading into healthcare.
Yeah. I wasn't here for yesterday's podcast, but I saw the highlights of and I heard about it. You guys were talking about Emory, and you're getting into a little bit anyway involving healthcare, and my interest is sparked on it because one of the largest talking points, especially of conservatives and Trump in his own right, is rising healthcare premiums. Because what we're seeing right now is healthcare, especially under Obamacare, they've been spiking. And this is via ABC News. Insurers are set to raise premiums for plans sold through healthcare.gov by an average of 22% in 2017. And this statistic is via the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So that's just one of the things we're seeing anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the insurance companies are starting to pull out of the plan. I think Aetna pulled out of the plan, and some states in Ohio there was some pushback. So I think it's gonna implode more than we can before we can do something to fix the issue.
Yeah, that's where the necessity of if people do want some form of healthcare system that repeal and replace, just because Obamacare seems to be so terribly broken. It seems like the only reason that it was actually enacted was just to have a rallying point for Democrats and other socialists.
Well, yeah. I mean, Obamacare is pretty much a lost cause by now.
Yeah.
And it seems like liberals don't want to accept that. And I like how they call the new conservative proposal. They say it's going to kill poor people and stuff like that, or kill children and poor families. And they appeal to like the pathos side of things, which in reality, even if you can't afford healthcare, they're still gonna take care of you. I mean, they're not gonna deny you like life-saving surgery just because you can't afford it. That's just the reality.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it's funny that they do that. Like, oh, you're going to kill poor people, you're going to kill children if you don't have this government enacted healthcare plan. And it's funny because like a huge reason that healthcare costs are so high is because of government in its own right.
Yeah, I mean, if we allowed free market controls on the industry, we'd be able to let the market adjust the premiums and be more competitive. And when the government steps in, they're reducing competition, just increasing premiums.
Yeah, I found this via Washington Post. Obamacare is fully implemented January 1st. The article was written in 2013. Even though the regulations haven't been written yet, so basically they haven't been finished writing. And Brian, we've got 33,000 pages of regulations that they've already written. If we stacked it up here, it would be 7 feet tall. This is Representative Richard Hudson, Republican of North Carolina, and he was speaking on Fox and Friends. You got to think about that. 33,000 regulations, and people wonder why healthcare costs are so high.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just in Obamacare alone. Like all the other ones that are there could be absolutely incredible.
We haven't mentioned the effect it's had on the doctors and a lot of the skilled doctors are leaving their professions because of it as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a big complaint amongst a lot of people, because I know people that I know, like adults that I know personally, that they've been complaining because they can't.
Yeah.
Because their healthcare doesn't cover a certain doctor that they've been going through, but they've been visiting for pretty much their entire life, and they can no longer go to that doctor because the healthcare now is like the government run healthcare is basically doesn't allow them to do that. They only allow them to go to certain doctors who are covered by that certain plan, and they can't go to who they would choose otherwise.
Yeah, it always makes me laugh when I hear that, because I remember the huge Obama talking point was, you will be able to keep your doctor, and very typical for that promise to backfire.
Well, have you guys seen in
Well,
I've seen in Canada where they've implemented socialized healthcare, and you have very little choice in what doctor you see there. Have you guys seen super hospitals in Canada? Have you seen anything about those? They're basically the equivalent of hospitals we have here, to where you pay for the service yourself that you want to do. That way you're not getting these crazy wait times, like of weeks and weeks, so you can actually see a doctor. You just go and you pay, and you get what you're paying for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
part of
well,
that. Oh, you can go.
go ahead. All right. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that quality of healthcare in Canada is dropping so drastically that
Hmm.
now a bunch of Canadians come to America for healthcare, and this is from the U.S.
We're
From
getting a
the
bad connection
U.S.
from you, Clay.
From the U.S. All right. Well, this is from the U.S. News and World Report. It says Canadians increasingly coming to America for healthcare, and they give an example of a guy who just drives 100 miles to go to, who lives in Toronto, who drives 100 miles to go to an American hospital because the quality of healthcare in Canada is so poor.
Yeah, and it's funny. We see it with Canada. Them coming here because um, I remember watching a video one time. It may have been Steven Crowder, and because he's a Canadian citizen, and he went back to Canada and he made up this false illness. And in an attempt to see a doctor, like the government-run clinics just couldn't have him. He had this like incredible wait time, but then he went to a super hospital type, and it was immediate.
Guess what the average wait time is? I just found it in this article.
In
I'm not
Canada,
sure.
Yeah, just guess like a time that
in
seems
all of
long.
Canada, or
Yeah, but
on which province?
just like in Canada in general. Like, what's the average wait time? I have it
3
right here.
months.
Just guess.
No, I'd probably guess around
Yeah.
20 weeks, 21 weeks.
It's 9.8 weeks, but still, that's
9.8.
pretty horrible. It says Canadians could expect to wait 9.8 weeks for medically necessary
Really?
treatment after seeing a specialist.
That's actually
necessary
lower than I thought,
treatment.
because in Ontario it's 15.6
Yeah.
weeks is the average.
Well,
In Nova
I guess,
Scotia, it's 34.8 weeks. On
well, yeah,
average.
because I think like when you consider Canada as a whole, there's like a bunch of lower populated areas, so that kind of like brings the average down a bit. But like in the populated areas we're talking about, it would be like in the 30s, which is horrible.
But
Yeah.
also, if you look at specialized treatment, of course, there neurosurgery, orthopedic surgery, all that. There are going to be certain doctors and particular reasons that specialize in that. So therefore, wait times can largely vary depending on your condition. I know
Yeah.
oncology, there are going to be probably more doctors in that than treating specialized brain diseases.
Yeah.
So
Well,
wait
yeah,
times are going to vary.
Yeah, neurosurgery is the longest wait time with about 47 weeks.
Well, yeah, that one's so
Hundred-
incredibly specialized that it's almost like, I could imagine that one because, to have a quality neurosurgeon
Yeah.
is a rarity in its own right, and then to actually have somebody, that's able to that's able to get them in. And yeah, something I found too in my research is one of the largest proponents of nationalized healthcare, at least in America, are people in the healthcare system. There's a graph. All the graphs and statistics that I find will be found on the WordPress later on, and via crowdpack.com. And it's a chart, and it shows the income, earnings in dollars, and then on the y, that's on the x-axis, and the y-axis it shows basically their political ideology in a sense, where the higher you go is the more conservative you are, and the lower you are is more liberal. And most of the professions are, and then there's a median line. I forgot to mention that there's a median line between the more conservative and the more liberal. And most of the professions and specializations like allergy and immunology, gynecology, critical care medicine, hematology, nephrology, family medicine, and then psychiatry and all that. All of these things are within they're on the more liberal side. And, it kind of makes me wonder about it. Like, because you think, why would they be the largest proponents? But then it's like, if you add, like, it's just like with college, and we can talk about that later on, that nationalized, like, single-payer healthcare system, it basically makes it to where they can charge whatever they want for service because, they have an unlimited government pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and contrary to popular belief, it's not even completely free because they have to pay for services like dental or ambulance services, or if they get prescription medication, those are mostly paid for out of pocket. And then there's insurance companies where they still have to put a deposit down and pay regularly in combination with like the public programs that are included with it.
Yeah, so they got like the single payer system basically, and then they have their insurance, but there's still like a copay with it, which is still funny.
Mhm.
Like, so it's basically what they're doing, what we do here.
Now the Senate.
And then, and also another point too is that like if you have so many, if you nationalize the healthcare system, it also adds more jobs in a sense to it, to where because so many people are going to be under one system that it's going to be required that there would be more. But as it's turned out, actually, at least in Canada, I remember this is also from the Steven Crowder video, that there's actually an issue with paying doctors there. Like they have a shortage of doctors in some of these countries.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if they don't get paid as much as they would in other countries, they don't have any motivation to be a doctor, pretty much. And
Well, yeah,
that
that's
creates a shortage of jobs, which isn't good
Yeah.
for a field where it's so necessary to have jobs.
And
Yeah,
a good
that's
point, and a point too is you have some Americans actually traveling to Canada to receive care, but even more Canadians are crossing the border to receive care in America. So you're having an interaction between the two healthcare systems, and it has implications for immigration as well in that sense.
Yeah, I remember my brother, he used to live out in California, and he used to travel to Mexico for dental care because it was so much cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how people go across borders, but with nationalized healthcare, I don't know, I can't remember it now. But I did what was it? It was something I saw a while ago in relation to like the quality, how the quality of care goes down with like increasing government interference. I don't have it right now, but
Well, yeah,
Well,
it's an inversely proportional relationship. There have been several things that have proven that.
Well, like a lot of liberals, they'll argue like they like to use the Scandinavian countries as examples where the healthcare's it's a utopia. The healthcare is great and it's free and it's just so amazing. But those countries have populations of what around 6 million or even
yeah,
less.
like
But we have a
6 to 10
we have a
million.
population. Yeah, we have a population upwards of 300 million. It's a completely different ballgame here.
Yeah. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare, no matter what you do, whether within a country or within the whole world. So,
Yeah, that's the thing is people try to do that with healthcare so often. They try to, really put a one-size-fits-all on it.
yeah.
And, these Scandinavian countries, Clay is right. People look at them as like these socialist utopias. But the thing is that when you have a culturally and racially homogenous people, at a population of 9 million, and you have them in the size of like a state of California or something like that. I mean, of course you're going to find these things. Here we have, an incredible amount of diversity, and then we also have I think it was like 320 something million.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark for people. Which that might be a worry in its own right when you really think about it, is the population, because I know the U.S. population is stabilizing.
It's 321.4 million.
Yeah.
But when you contrast it with Norway, Norway is 5.1 million. So that's even a big difference there.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
Clay, we're not getting good connection with you.
But yeah, we see it in a lot of Western countries that the populations are stabilizing quite a bit. Like our population is barely growing. I know countries like Italy, Great Britain, Germany, their populations are barely growing. We see it in Japan now.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Japan recently got under 1 million births per year, I think.
Well, yeah, each family only averages they average like one birth per family. It's like 1 point something, but it's well below. Like in contrast to the U.S., I think the U.S. is like 2.1.
Yeah. Yeah, we're at least replacing the population and growing slightly.
But then you have to worry about the countries because apparently by 2050, Nigeria is gonna the population of Nigeria is gonna be higher than the population of the U.S.
Well, yeah,
But
I mean,
compare like the land size of Nigeria with the with the
the
land
land
size
size
of the U.S.
Yeah, well, that has to do
But
a
if
lot
you
with
look
our what I'm looking for. Scott, I can't think of the word. How long people average live in the U.S.
Life
Lifespan?
expectancy.
Yeah, sorry, life expectancy rate in the U.S. Being a lot higher than in countries like that. So, I mean, but what's happening is, they've always had a high turnover rate when it comes to population in African countries. Like many families, I forget what the average is per child, but they continuously have children. But then there's a high mortality rate in countries like that, so it would always kind of even out. But as situation and things get better in those third world countries, but they're still continuing to have children at the same rate, it's going to become overpopulated very quickly.
Well, yeah, because I mean, a lot of countries in Africa they really average around like 8 births per family. But then, like as you said, when infant mortality rate is high, like maybe only 3 or 4 of those would survive. But now, if you have like all 8 surviving, that's going to cause a exponential population growth.
Mm-hmm.
And to tag on the previous point, even though the population is stabilizing in America, you look at large urban centers, especially where there's a lot of immigration, the population is increasing more than the general population. So I think that applies to that one-size-fits-all health approach. Depending on the population of the cities, it will require a different approach to design healthcare for that particular needs and the needs of the community.
Well, yeah, we see it. Not as much here, but in some urban centers internationally, we see issues with pollution and all that.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about it that people who tend to live in more rural areas have lower rates of cancers, for example. But yeah, one of the things too that's good for the point on African countries is to mention that the thing about these countries is that most of them aren't industrialized. The vast majority of these people live pretty much off subsistence farming. There isn't a whole lot going on. And so the thing is that they need 2 things. They need as many hands on deck to be able to work as much as possible, but they also need males. So say one person, a couple, they have 7 children, but only one of them is a male. They're going to keep trying to have more males.
Yeah, I think Dr. Jim Penman, he wrote about this in his book Biohistory, on how they studied monkeys in Africa, and then they studied them, I believe, in South America. How in South America they were in an environment that was less hostile towards them, and how they would only have as many children as the population could handle. Like each family would only have a maximum of 2 or so. But then the same monkeys in Africa that lived in a very hostile environment had several children, but didn't raise them, didn't even care for them as much as the monkeys in the more the less violent society where they were less likely to die.
Well, I think that's very it's a good point to make, because I mean we see it with African societies all the time. How you give it 10 years, there'll be another civil war or 2 going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the common myth about the Mao Zedong era in China, where they would kill any child who was like above the second child in their family. That family was only allowed to have 2. That was a complete myth. I mean, they wouldn't kill children if they were the third born child in their family, but they would give tax benefits to the families who only had 2 children or less.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be like a policy adopted by these countries, is to give tax benefits to the families that meet a certain quota.
Yeah, that's the thing. You could do that with countries that are a bit more industrialized, a China or an India or something like that. But countries like Africa, where these people have like very little monetary wealth
And there's
anyway,
basically no government.
Yeah,
yeah,
tax isn't exactly
very
something
little
they think
government.
about. But I mean, going forward, as they become, more civilized, bring up their life expectancy, but they continue to still have these large numbers of children, then implementing a program in which they would get tax breaks for less children would be logical.
Well, fixing the healthcare problem in countries like these is going to involve much more than implementing systems like that. It's going to involve, of course, pollution and the water and all that, because we're constantly going to have disease spread in Africa more than in other countries. So we can't really fix the healthcare problem until we fix the underlying issue in places like that.
And a lot of the existing healthcare is provided by the West, like through Red Cross and other organizations. Like we provide they have it for healthcare.
Yeah, and especially like the international benefits that we give, like we give many of these countries money. In a lot of ways, we are subsidizing these countries, and I use subsidizing specifically because a lot of them haven't really put out anything of, they don't give much back to the international community.
Wait. Are you telling me that cutting off the limbs of somebody who's born albino isn't going to cure them? It's the West that's curing them? That's insane.
Yeah, and you see, I remember hearing about it too. Apparently, it was a common thought, especially more rural Africans, that if you had AIDS, whatever way that you got it, you contracted HIV/AIDS virus, the way to get rid of it is to have anal sex with a virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and like that's what a lot of the Red Cross been doing. They've been teaching them about certain things that they should do to prevent the spread of diseases and how to cure or alleviate the diseases that they have, because a lot of these, like you said, a lot of people in these rural areas have no idea what's going on, so they just spread like this.
I mean, it's going to cause a complete transformation of society, and it'll never happen for them to even understand what the diseases and these causes. They're always going to rely on organizations and companies from the West, just like the Red Cross, as you mentioned, and all the other minor independent mission organizations, to teach them and to, of course, educate them about what they're even facing.
Yeah, it's really going to take us taking away what, the work that we've done, at least some of it anyway. I mean, some of these volunteer organizations, they do good work. These are people there. I'm not going to be cruel to them. It's just, when you look at it really, it's like if you have one kid and you give them anything they want anytime they ask for it, and then you have another kid that you always make them like work for it and all that, usually you pretty much always you're going to find that the kid that had to work for his stuff, he's going to fend a lot better on his own and figure out things a lot better on his own, as opposed to the kid that was handed everything.
Yeah, but if we're talking about like in terms of international aid, like the percentage of money that goes to African countries doesn't even compare to what we give to countries in the Middle East and Israel.
Oh yeah, we give an incredible amount to Israel, and we
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia and Israel, these are fairly well off, especially if you look at the Human Development Index of these countries. These are fairly well off, wealthy countries.
Yeah, because Israel, I mean, we give them. I'm looking at the number right now, but we give them so much more than anyone else, and in reality, they don't need it in comparison. All right, so we gave Israel $3.1 billion in 2015, and then the next country was Afghanistan at 1.5. So that's nearly double, or more than double, what we give the second country, Afghanistan, followed by Egypt, Pakistan, Nigeria.
Yeah, and we look at a country like Afghanistan. They have no infrastructure. They're incredibly rural. The populace is just uneducated.
Like the infrastructure they have was provided by the Soviet Union, pretty much.
Yeah, the Soviet Union and now us, who were creating everything, and soon enough it'll be gone once. Because I think we're supposed to withdraw from Afghanistan by roughly like 2019 or something. And once we're out, the Taliban will be in there within the next 5 years. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but generally with these countries, like I don't, Israel, if we're going to compare to Afghanistan, I mean, we have public schooling there. They're similar to how we are, except other than the mandatory conscription. But
Well, Israel is kind of like an oasis of the West in the Middle East, because most of the original settlers of Israel were from the West.
Yeah,
from
most
Europe.
of them were European Jews, and they only migrated there after the Holocaust. The only like remnants of the original people that are there are in West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and we see how they're doing anyway. But I think whatchamacallit? I think for some of these Middle Eastern countries and African countries, it's just going to be required that they almost fend for themselves in a sense.
Because I mean, if you look at it, what difference has all the aid money we've been giving them made? It really has. In retrospect, it really hasn't made much of a difference. I mean, they're still in a constant state of just squalor and disorder.
Yeah,
Here's
we
an
pretty much. Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, here's an interesting chart. The NPR actually published it in 2014. They did a extensive healthcare study. The United States spends nearly $10,000 per person on healthcare, but with a similar life expectancy of that of other countries, like the United Kingdom and Japan are the next closest behind, and they spend $4,000, and the life expectancy is pretty much the same. So that definitely tells something. And that Somalia actually spends the least, just $33 per person. So.
Well, I think many of these people don't spend any money on healthcare,
Yeah.
especially as it comes to Somalia.
But if you look at Somalia, their life expectancy is 54. So.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, we spend incredible amounts now on healthcare. But
And a lot of it is just because we have a bigger population than Britain or
course.
Britain or Japan. But still, I mean, what was
that's
it?
10,000.
More
that's more than double the next country with the same life expectancy.
Yeah.
What's the next country behind them?
UK and Japan are pretty much the same. The UK looks like they're both slightly under $4,000, but US is about 9,600. 9,237 exactly the US spends, according to the 2014 NPR study.
Yeah, we also see different things too. Like one thing that could contribute to it is the fact that we do have more people, but more people can mean like new illnesses, or not necessarily new illnesses, but more illnesses that can be born into a person, basically, like type 1 diabetes, for example. The more people there are, it's just statistics, the more you're going to find those diseases.
Yeah, you're gonna have like people with inherent diseases, like you mentioned, that just require treatment throughout their lives, which is not exactly cheap.
Yeah, there's that, and then we're not the most obese country in the world anymore. Mexico has taken its rightful place at the top. However, the obesity has something to do with it too, because none of these people are not only obese and their diets are worse, which that's something to mention about European countries too, is that they have much more regulations on food, or many more regulations on food. Thus, the quality of food they're getting is better. But it's a type of thing of people here, they're eating McDonald's, they're not exercising and all that.
Well, yeah, and a lot of it because the poor, like the U.S. is pretty much the only country you can go to where we have fat poor people because of all the benefits, all the welfare benefits. They just get so much more than people in other countries would get, and that allows them to, actually eat more than they require. Which is why that's a common joke. Like the U.S. is really the only one of the only countries where we have fat poor people.
Well, that also has to do with food being so plentiful here in the U.S.
Well, yeah, that's obviously some of it, but I don't think you could go around in Europe and see people who are on welfare who are significantly overweight.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
they do have more regulations, but still it has something to do with like just we're way too generous on welfare. Like in the past, it was you have enough to of course survive, support your family for a while you look for a job. Now it's just the logic is that they can just live off of it.
And
Well,
there's a whole lot of differences between the attitude of Americans and welfare and the attitude of Europeans and welfare. And we could go into like a whole thing about that, but I think we should save that for our next stream.
You're breaking up.
Oh, I was saying I think we should save that for our next stream, the difference between Europeans and their attitude towards welfare and Americans and our attitude towards welfare. Because we could go on a tangent on that for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so
All right, so we done?
yeah, we're gonna end our stream right here.